Today is over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, "Why is the Media Ignoring the Blatant Efforts to Suppress the Democratic Vote in Georgia?" And it's voter fraud again. This started with Richard Nixon in 1960 when he claimed that Mayor Daley stole the election from him and gave it to Jack Kennedy. And when in fact, even if Nixon had carried the entire state of Illinois, he still would have lost the election. Kennedy had 303 electoral votes. Nixon had 219, if I'm remembering correctly. So, it would have been, Nixon would have lost no matter what, but A. And B, the Republicans demanded 2 recounts, one before the inauguration of Kennedy and one after the inauguration of Kennedy in Chicago. They got those recounts, and both recounts showed that Jack Kennedy won Chicago and won Illinois. But that voter fraud excuse has become the principal religion of the Republican Party, even though no voter fraud of any consequence exists. And for decades now, they have been using this as an excuse to make it harder to vote, to make it harder to register to vote, to be able to purge people from voting lists, to tighten down the number of hours that you can vote, to make it harder to mail-in vote. I mean, all of these have been predicated on this assumption that there's this massive voter fraud. And the only voter fraud that they've been able to find, and yeah, every year we get, you get the stories of 10 or 20 people who get arrested. Mostly, typically in the last couple of years, they've been Republicans trying to vote for Trump because he's out there going, oh yeah, all the Democrats are doing it. And so they're going, hey, the Democrats are doing it, I might as well. They're believing him, not realizing that if you do commit voter fraud, you will get caught. So, they needed this excuse, and they needed to strengthen this excuse. So down in Florida, Ron DeSantis creates his little election police and arrests 15 black people for voting while being felons. They thought they could vote. In fact, the state registered them to vote and said, sure, go ahead and vote. And then they voted, and then boom, they're in shackles. Well, that had quite an impact in this election, apparently. The NBC TV affiliate down in Miami reports that this only happened in the counties with large cities in them. In rural areas, the Democrats showed up just like they normally do. Rural areas, you don't have a lot of, there are some rural black areas in Florida, but generally speaking, most of the rural areas in Florida are white. But the cities have black people in them. And sure enough, Miami-Dade County, there's 135,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. 60% of the registered Republicans voted, only 46% of the Democrats voted. Why? Because black people know, after watching Ron DeSantis arrest 15 of them, that white cops and a white jury can nail you for anything. That was Miami-Dade. In Palm Beach County, there's 106,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, yet DeSantis won it. Republicans won it. Why? Because only 55% of registered Democrats showed up, but 64% of the Republicans showed up. Same thing in Central and North Florida, in the major urban areas. 53,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in Hillsborough County. These were all counties that Joe Biden walked away with a year ago, before the arrests of black people. But in that county, in those counties, Central and North Florida, Hillsborough County, only 39% of Democrats showed up to vote. They were frightened. In North Florida's Duval County, 31,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. Biden took it walking away, but again, DeSantis won big time this time. Because 65% of Republicans showed up to vote, only 49% of Republicans, because black voters were frightened away, basically. And, legitimately so. Then on top of that, you've got, then this is going on in Georgia now. You've got the voter purges going on. You've got the vigilantes out there identifying voters to purge. You got long lines. That is the last day of voter suppression. But the question that I'm asking is, why isn't the media talking about this? Why is there no reference to this? And on the rare occasions when they do, hey, look at these long lines in Cobb County. A lot of black people live in Cobb County. I used to live in Cobb County. Look at these long lines. Even in the white areas of Cobb County, it's largely Democratic. Didn't always be that. It wasn't always that way. It wasn't that way in the 80s, but it is now. And, you know, what do those long lines mean? Voter suppression. Long lines are a Republican, in Democratic areas, are a Republican strategy to suppress the vote. Who can afford to stand in line when they're paid by the hour? But I'm not seeing it anywhere in the media other than yesterday. Last night, the New York Times did one pretty good story, actually, pointing this out. It was titled, "Turnout was strong in Georgia, but mail voting plummets after new law." That's it. Where's the media?